Hello everyone, welcome to the sessions of programming with Python. In today's session, we'll be focusing on the for loop. Like we understood in the previous session, in the preceding session, that what a loop is. So basically, a loop is a concept in Python which is used to execute a block of code or a set of instruction for a certain number of times. And we learned that in Python there are two types of loops. One is while loop and one is for loop. The previous session focused mainly on while loop, how we learned what a basic syntax of a while loop is, how to use a while loop, how we can use other concept which can accommodate a while loop and we can solve the different problems. This session will mainly going to focus on for loop. To understand what a basic syntax of a for loop is, then this is how it looks. When we were learning the while loop, we used while as a keyword and we wrote condition and we wrote the body. So the way while loop works is, as long as the condition is true, as long as program finds that condition is true, it is continuously going to run the body, whatever the instructions are written body. But when it comes to for loop, the way we write for loop is we are going to write the keyword for, and I'm going to write for element in sequence. Then we have body. Okay, try to read it just like an English, that for element in sequence. That means in while loop, the way we run is, as long as the condition is true, we are continuously going to run the loop. We are going to continuously iterate over that set of instruction. But when it comes to for loop, for each element that is present in sequence, so let's first create a sequence. For example, for element in, I'll write here A, B, C, and D. And here I write print hello. Okay, so I've written this single instruction here, print hello. If I run this, you will see that hello is printed 4 times, right? Now what's happening here is, if you try to read for element in this particular sequence, I am iterating. So for each element, that means I will take one loop for A, one loop for B, one loop for C, and one loop for D. And once this whole sequence is exhausted, I'll stop my loop automatically. Okay. Why do we write this element here? Now, it is not necessary that you have to write element there. You could have also written I there, or you could have written alphabet there. This is a temporary variable which gets created only for the duration while your for loop is running. And for each loop that you're going around, that corresponding element will be stored in this, which you can utilize in your instructions. For example, if I print, okay, let me print it here itself, hello. This is alphabet. Let me write here this particular alphabet. Yeah. So let's see what is stored in this. So if I print this, you see, hello, this is the alphabet A, B, C, and D. So what was happening is, for each element in that sequence, there is going to be a loop taken for you. And in that loop, this particular variable which you're creating, this will store the corresponding element. So it's, if it's the first loop, it will store A. If it's second loop, it will store B. If it's third loop, it will store C. And for each, it's going to take loops as many number of times as many elements are there. So here there are 4 elements, so 4 times you're going to loop around. So the difference between while loop and for loop is that in while loop, you run the loop as long as the condition is true. However, in for loop, you run the loop as many number of times as many elements are there present in the sequence which you are defining here. I could have also defined this sequence something like this. say alphabets underscore set. I can define my list or my sequence here as well, and I can iterate over here. So this is an easier way for me. I'm referencing that this is a sequence here. So for each alphabet here, I can even give a shorter name, something like this. For char here, I'll change, and you shall see that it runs the same way, right? If I increase the element here, something like this, then you will see that my loop also increases, right? One easy thing in for loop is you don't have to worry about controlling your loop. You don't have to worry about that it will go towards an infinite loop. No, that doesn't happen. Okay, so this is the whole structure of for loop. This is how you write. This is syntax. In case you want to break off from the for loop, just like how we did in while loop, the keyword that we learned, break and continue, the same keywords are applicable in for loop also. This break is used to break off from the ongoing loop abruptly. Okay, so suddenly if you want to break off, you can use this. Continue is used to skip over the pending instructions for that particular loop and resume the loop from next iteration. Okay, let's see how we can use these here. Suppose I want to break off by any chance if C is encountered, then what I'm going to do here is I'll take decision if char is equal to C. In that case, I'll break. Okay, and I'm going to print here the program is ended. Okay, if I run this, you will see that right after C, I am out of the loop. My looping process is done, and I say the program is ended. Right? To get a better gist of a for loop, let's now try out few examples where we can use the for loop and see how practically this is used in Python. Let's consider this particular question to practice the for loop. So here I am saying that using for loop, we need to assess in how many subjects did the student fail. So I need to tell the count. If I consider that passing marks is 35, then by looking at it, you can see, right, there is this particular subject he has failed, here he has failed, and here. So there are totally 3 subjects in which the student has failed. But how do you determine that using a for loop? I mean, using a Python. Of course, you can do this using a while loop. You can do this using the for loop. And as a matter of fact, anything that you can do using the for loop, you can also do using the while loop and the vice versa. But it is just the matter of convenience which loop you're going to use. To solve the problem, you can take either while loop or for loop, whichever seems comfortable to you. Um, if you had chosen to do this particular problem using while loop, you would have to write the position, you will have to control that position, starts at the 0th position, go up to maximum until here. You'll have to access each element using that position and take a decision whether student failed or not. But when it comes to for loop, the for loop makes easier. For example, for I say score in student scores. One recommendation here, please give this particular name so meaningful that it implies the individual element that is being stored here. So if it is score, then you're writing score in a singular form, right? So that makes your program more readable. Now for score in student score, that means I'm going to loop around taking each score different times in different loops. I'm going to take the decision here. If score is less than passing marks, I would say print the student has failed as the score is, let me print the score as well. Okay, If I run this, you will see that the student has failed and the score is 31, right? It has only considered the failed score. If I want to take a count, let me create another variable which is going to store the count for us. So every time it is detected that the student has failed, let me increment the counter here. And after the whole looping process is done, I can print the total subjects in which student failed is, look at this, the total count of subjects in which student failed is 3. So this is how a for loop is used. Now let's go one step further and try to complicate the problem statement. Okay, so let me create here another list which is called as subjects. Okay, now here I'm going to create the name of subject. For example, I would say mathematics, I would say English, the language subject, I would say science, I would say history, I would say geography, and I would say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How many schools are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, let me reduce one score here. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we have 6 marks. Let's also create 6 subjects. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Another subject would be, let's create computer science. Okay, this is one subject. Now let me modify the question and say in what subjects. So when I say what subjects, remember that this is the list of marks that the student scored, and this is the list of subjects, the name of subjects. I am supposed to determine first whether the student has failed. If he has failed, then what was the corresponding subject? I am supposed to say, oh, he has failed in English, he has failed in history, etc. So how do we do that? This time I'm not asking for the count, so let's remove the count logic. So if you guys remember, when we were doing list, there were different methods that were associated with the list, right? For example, if I create a list like data equals to 5, 10, 15, and I want to add one data at the end, what I'm going to do? I'm going to write data.append. I would say 100. And post this, if I try to print the data, what will happen is it is going to give me the updated list, right? In a similar way, if I want to know at what position is 15 existing, then what I'll do, I'll use, there is something called as index. Okay, index 15. This index function, or this you can say index method, this will tell you in the data at what position is 15 located. So it's going to tell you the index position or position of this particular content. Now if this is going to tell us the position, let's store it in a variable. Yeah, so whatever is coming to me through the syntax, I'm storing that back in position. So if I try to print position here, it is giving me 2, right? So 0, 1 and 2 position, 15 is being stored. Now let's use this particular concept to determine in which subject did the student fail. So here, of course, I know, I mean, this decision making is helping me to know that student has failed, right? So let me now capture the position of that particular score. Okay, so I'll write here student.scores dot, because this is the that larger sequence from which you need to access the position, isn't it? Because this sequence and this sequence is of equal length, correct? This is of equal length, and correspondingly here the marks are there and here the subjects are there, right? Let me write here. Okay, so basically mathematics belongs to 50, 31 is score in English, 76 score in science. So if I know that student has failed, because it is 31, he has failed, and so it's at the first position, first index, the student is failing, then I'll pick up the subject from the first position from this list. So this is the logic I'm trying to go by with. So I'll write here index score, because I know that this score is a failure score, and this position, let me rename it better, failed position. Okay, and out here I'm going to print is, I'll take up this, and according to this particular position, okay, sorry, that's my bad, I should be writing subjects here. Okay, because from the subjects I should be picking up the corresponding position, whatever is stored at that position. So here if I print, you see that the student has failed and the score is 31. The name, let me, yep, okay, the name of the subject is English, and then again the student has failed and the score is 25. The name of subject is history, right? I can also print it very next to each other, and the subject is, let me reposition this. Okay, yep. So if you see here, count is no more there. Why is it still giving count? Okay, I should remove this because previous value is still stored in the memory. Okay, now you can see that even the marks are being printed and even the subjects are being printed. So score are picked up from this particular score, and the subject I am fetching because I have determined here what is that corresponding position at which the failure is happening, and from that failure I'm picking up the corresponding subject name from here, right? So this is one example, a classic example where you can see how we have used a for loop to solve a problem, right? Let's consider another problem statement for practice. So the question is, in the below list, print the cities which has vowels present in them. Okay, so let me create a variable called as cities in which there is something called as, say, New York, then Paris, Delhi, mm, I think let's modify the question because most of the cities has vowels in them. Let me say cities which has length greater than 5 characters. Okay, so you can see that New York has how many? So when I say length is greater than 5 characters, all, even the space is counted in a string as a character. Okay, so here this length would be 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This is 8, this is 5, this is 5, and this is 7. Okay, let me write some more. Goa, let me write mm, few more places. Okay, or maybe I can say, yep. Okay, so here I'm going to write the code that for city in cities, print city. If you observe this simple code, what it does is, for each city in cities, that means for each city is going to take a loop. Every time it is taking loop, that corresponding city is going to be stored in city, and that is what is getting printed here. Look at this. Mm, did I do some mistake? Yep, I put two codes there. Yes. So here you can see that all the city are, we are able to access. So you have all the city one by one in different loop at your disposal. Now what do you do with them? You can take a decision. To take a decision, what keywords do you use? I can take if, maybe if length of. So what is this length function? Length function gives you back the length in that particular um, content. So if it is New York, this length will be given to you as 8. Okay, if it is greater than 5, because this is the logic that we want, I'm going to print the length is greater than 5 characters for the city, for the city. Yeah. So these two things will be printed next to each other the way I have given the command. And if I run this, you will see that the length is greater than 5 characters for New York, Toronto, Austin, Chicago, and San Jose. You see that Goa has been missed, Delhi has been missed, Paris has been missed. All these have been skipped because for those elements, while you were looping around these cities one by one, they did not satisfy these conditions and hence you have missed them. Okay. If I write 10 characters here, so you will see that most of them, okay, let me write here 15 characters. Okay. And let me write here 15 characters, and you will see that none of them have been printed because none of them are greater than 15. If I write 10 here, you will see that none of them have still been printed. If I write 8 here, let's see. Yep, only the Stuttgart has been considered, right? Okay, so this is how the for loop basically works. You write a sequence, you iterate over the sequence, your looping is limited, and every time you loop, you know that you're going to loop around on a certain number of times. You can do something in that which needs to be done repeatedly. If you want to use this data which you have, you can use this also. Now let me introduce to you uh, something called as range. Okay, say if I tell you that I need to print numbers from 1 to 5, what you can do is you can create immediately a list which has the numbers, say 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? And you can immediately walk around and write for a number, okay, or for num in numbers, I'm going to print num. So all the numbers shall be printed. What if you want to put it in reverse? Then there is a function called as reversed. What this function do is this reverses the sequence. Okay, so you can see here that this sequence has been reversed, and here the reverse sequence gets placed. And because the reverse sequence has been placed, so effectively you're looping around the reverse sequence 5 4 3 2 1 0. Make sense? But what if I told you that I want to loop around for 10 elements long? Then you may consider enhancing this list up to 10 elements. Let me remove the reverse at the moment. Okay, that's how it works. But what if I tell you that now I want to consider 0 to 100 or 0 to 10,000 or a million characters or million numbers? Is it feasible to do it or keep on writing or keep on framing such uh, list by yourself? No, that's not practical. You cannot keep on framing the list. It has to be dynamic. We need to have some way with ourselves, such a way that such kind of sequence can be generated on the go, right? And that's where I'm going to introduce to you the range function. Just like you have print function, you have input function, you have length function. One of the functions on the similar lines is range. What range does is it takes three parameters. One is called as start, one is called as end. Okay, so what this means is at what position do you want to start? I can write I want to start at 0th position. At what position you want to go up to? Remember, it is not until what point, it is what up to. So if I write 100, then this is going to generate the sequence for you 0 1 2 and all the way up to 99 because it is up to 100. Okay, so if I write here like this, so instead of this I shall write here range 100. Okay, and if I run this, you will see that the sequence has been printed for you up to 99. Correct? If I write here 10, it'll print the sequence 0 to 9. Remember, one more thing you can give is you can put another comma and you can give the stride or the jumps. For example, I can give 2. So in the range function, it is not just start and end, or sorry, start and up to, but also you can give something called a stride. Okay, You can say stride or you can say jump, whatever helps you remember this. This is not necessary to give, because if you're not giving it, by default 1 shall be considered. What this means is, if I'm not giving this, then 0 to 10 sequence shall be generated for you, around which you're going to loop, and in that sequence the difference will be 1. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 up to 9. But if I give 2, then what happens is, uh, after a number is generated, the second number from then on shall be generated. So you can see that 0, 2, 4, 6, 8. If I give 100, you'll see that 0, 2, 4, 6, all the alternate numbers has been generated. If I give 5 here, you will see that it's the difference with 5 that is being generated. If I give here 15, that means I'm starting at 15, then going up to 100, then you will see that the sequence that is being generated is like this, right? So this is one quick way to get the sequence with yourself. And as you know that in for loop, it is mandatory to put the sequence here, correct? Right. So let's try out another problem statement. For example, ask user to provide a number. Okay. Then second is generate the multiplication table for that number up to 10 points. Okay, what I mean by that is, if user says that it's 2, then I will have to write 2 times, okay, 1 times 2 is 2, and similarly I will have to write 2 times 2 is 4, 3 times 2 is 6, 4 times 2 is 8, so on and so forth, all the way up to what? 10 times 2 is 20. All right. So such kind of table I have to generate. So how do I do? I'm going to ask user number. I'm going to ask user how. Um, Input, please enter a number for which you want to generate the table. Okay. Or I would say the multiplication table. All right. And the second thing is, remember this, when the user gives 2 or 3 or 10, any numbers which he gives, this is going to come in a string format. We cannot do the mathematical operation, the multiplication or addition, we cannot do on a string kind of data. So what do? You push this into integer function, because this data which is incoming through the user keyboard, this data shall be converted into integer through this function, and you're going to store the integer here. Okay, now I'm going to write for number in range. Okay, why did I use range? Because I want to dynamically generate the sequence. I will write from 0, okay, let me write from 1 up to, write 1 up to 10. Okay, because it is 10 points. Fine. I think a while ago I told 20, but no, it's not 20, it is 10. Okay, here I'm going to write print, uh, let me write number, comma, times, this time I'll write user number is, what I'm going to write, user number multiplied by, I'll write here number. Why am I writing here? Because when I'm giving such constants next to each other in the print function, they are going to be printed in the same line and next to each other. Okay, and I want at the end the computed result. That means the first time I want to let me run it and show you. Okay, let me give here say 5. Okay, so you see here in the first loop it printed 1 times 5 is 5. So for every loop, uh, this computation has happened. A sequence was generated from 1 to 10. That is what was being stored in number. In the first loop, 1 was stored. In second loop, 2, 3, 4, and that's how this a customized statement has been printing here. Okay, so this is how this particular problem could be solved using a for loop. And suppose I tell you suddenly that I don't want to print this only for let me add here except. Okay, except for seventh point. Okay, so if it is 7, if the number is 7, for that particular alone I don't want to compute this. What I can do here is I can take a decision here. If number equal to 7, then what I can do here is continue. That means for that particular iteration, any pending further instruction shall be skipped and I shall move on to the next one. So what is the next one? That is 8. If I run this, you will see that although at the moment 7 is there, but if I run this, you will see that 7th is skipped, right? So why is continue used? Continue is used to skip any pending instruction in that loop and move on to the next loop. Okay, and if I tell you at sixth point break off, okay, that means although I told you that you have to print up to 1 to 9, but what if I tell you that at sixth I have to break off? So I can write here if, okay, I can use this decision making itself, if number is equal to 6, and I'm going to write break. So what's going to happen is I will suddenly terminate the process of loop. You can see that it breaks off right after 5, correct? So this is how the for loop is used in Python, and different problem statement could be solved using for loop or the while loop in synchronization with the different concepts like decision making, the keywords, by taking the input from the user, storing it somewhere like a variable, range function, etc. Okay.